Bible prophecy is active and unfolding daily. Zechariah 12, Isaiah 17, Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38. Here is what the lamestream media is not telling you. Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's newscast. And what a newscast it is. Things are certainly escalating. Last week I reported that Moscow's military force in Syria has grown to 4,000. But that, along with more than a month of Russian airstrikes, has not led to pro-government forces making any significant territorial gains against ISIS. And I further reported that Washington has had little success as well in affecting the conflict targeting ISIS after more than a year of airstrikes, pointing out that ISIS, Satan's army, Satan's move on the world scene toward the tribulation, is growing, not diminishing. Well, last Friday morning, Obama appeared on ABC's Good Morning America, telling George Stephanopoulos that, quote, ISIS is contained, and also that, quote, ISIS hasn't gained any ground. And oops, just hours after the show aired, 3 teams of Islamic State attackers acting in unison carried out a terrorist assault against 6 targets in Paris, when bars and restaurants were bustling with residents and tourists. As ISIS stormed in, glass shattered under the rage of bullets, and excited weekend chatter turned into panicked screams. A Cambodian restaurant called Le Petit Cambodge and the Le Carillon bar across the street were attacked by drive-by shooters. 15 people were killed and 10 others were wounded. Then a second explosion took place near the stadium, killing only the suicide bomber. Also, the Casa Nostra restaurant was attacked by drive-by shooters. 5 people were killed and 8 injured. Another shooting at the La Belle Equipe restaurant left 19 dead and 9 injured. And further still, a suicide bomber attacked another restaurant, injuring several people. The death toll was 129, with 352 others wounded, 99 of them critically. The deadliest being a massacre at the Bataclan concert hall, where at least 100 people were taken hostage and killed. Fans were listening to an American rock band called Eagles of Death Metal, with songs that deliver purely satanic messages. ISIS said it targeted the Bataclan because it was, quote, full of idolaters, close quote. Note, the Bataclan Theater was Jewish-owned for 4 decades and had been the venue for pro-Israel events until it was sold 2 months ago. Another target was near a soccer match as France competed with world champion Germany. Terrified fans huddled together and streamed into the field after blasts went off. Others hugged. There has been an outpouring of support and solidarity in Paris, but large gatherings in the streets have not materialized, in part because the state of emergency is currently prohibiting public gatherings, and also the level of fear is keeping people off the streets. In the aftermath of the attacks, Parisians are helping each other out by using social media to invite those in need inside their homes. This event should concern every intelligence organization whose government is hostile towards ISIS. France is the only European country bombing in Syria, apart from Russia, who lost a civilian plane full of passengers in the Sinai skies. Britain avoided doing so because of opposition in the British Parliament, and Canada stopped bombing after Justin Trudeau replaced Stephen Harper as Prime Minister. The scale and apparent coordination of these attacks, which come right on the heels of ISIS taking down a Russian airliner in Egypt, represent a significant escalation of ISIS's capabilities. This act of Islamic Jihad has been noted as the worst violence in France since World War II. And France, after vowing revenge, began bombing ISIS targets in eastern Syria on Sunday evening, November 15th. They targeted a command post, a jihadist recruiting center, a weapons warehouse, and a terrorist training camp, dropping 20 bombs on ISIS's de facto capital in Raqqa, Syria. ISIS is claiming responsibility for the horrific attacks in Paris, warning that, quote, "this is just the beginning." And to paraphrase Ron Ben-Yishai from Ynet News, the world war between murderous fundamentalist Islam and Western civilization, and basically anyone and anything not Muslim, will have to be waged without compromise. We are all in the same boat, and no, this current escalation of terrorism has nothing to do with the falsely named occupation of Palestine. Some personal thoughts. Songs about stabbing Jews to death, including one by the winner of the Palestinian equivalent of American Idol, are all the rage on West Bank airwaves a year after the twisted hit parade featured calls for running down Israelis with cars. The youth of the Palestinian territories are being bombarded with tunes and lyrics about murder and martyrdom on government-controlled radio. Quote, "We are going down from every house with cleavers and knives," close quote, goes the refrain in a song titled, "I'm Coming Towards You, My Enemy." YouTube videos that accompany the songs feature images of Palestinian terrorists stabbing Jews and then being martyred by Israeli forces, or cartoon animations glorifying the knife as a symbol of resistance. Other big current hits sweeping the Palestinian charts include "Continue the Intifada" and "Stab the Zionist and Say Allahu Akbar." Note, as Pastor J.D. Farag explained in last Sunday's prophecy update, Allahu Akbar does not mean Allah is great, but rather Allah is greater, or Allah is greatest, really pointing at Satan, who wants to be higher than Yahweh, the Most High. Nan Jacques Zilberdick of Palestinian Media Watch said, quote, "We see the leadership trying to fuel the rage and inflame the Palestinian street by all the time repeating the libel that Israel is faking the attacks. They say that all the terrorists are really just innocent Palestinian victims who were walking by Israeli soldiers on the way to school or on the way to the mosque, and then Israel shoots at them and plants knives at the scene," close quote. And as I continually point out, my friends, that is the kind of rhetoric we get from the children of Satan, the father of lies, and the author of confusion. If anyone thinks their life is rolling along as it always has, Business as usual. Everything is the same as it always has been. Planning Thanksgiving Day festivities with family and looking forward to another Christmas season of buying gifts and lighting up their Christmas trees and houses. They are truly acting exactly like the flock of sheep that follows the lead sheep off the cliff. Things have changed so very drastically in our lives, my friends. And yet everyone is so busy texting and staring at their cell phones. They don't even seem to be noticing anything at all. It's truly astonishing to watch, and so very perplexing to realize that there's nothing to be done about it. It's as though the average person is in denial. You can't strike up a conversation about world events and get any interested feedback. All you get is the old proverbial deer caught in headlights reaction, as you're thought of as some sort of weirdo who needs to be avoided. And as we are told in Revelation, Chazon, chapter 22, verse 11, let the one who does wrong continue to do wrong. Let the one who does right continue to do right. In other words, unless someone asks you for advice, don't bother giving any. The darkness has now become too thick. In last week's newscast, I remarked about the Greek word tachos, seen in Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, and how time itself seems to be condensing, crunching, moving faster. Well, if you haven't seen last Thursday's word study, I wound up discussing that in greater detail. You'll see this graphic at the end of today's newscast, as well as a text link beneath this video in the Show More section that you can click on, and it'll take you directly to last Thursday's video. Turning to wars and rumors of wars. On Tuesday, November 10th, the Queiris Air Base, a major military base for Syrian regime troops in the northern province of Aleppo, has been under ISIS siege for more than a year. But Syrian regime army forces broke the siege on Tuesday when, after fierce battles with ISIS, dozens of pro-regime forces broke into the airbase. On Wednesday, November 11th, from Reuters, Iran has stopped dismantling centrifuges in the Natanz and Fordow uranium enrichment plants just days after conservative lawmakers complained to President Hassan Rouhani that the process was too rushed. The head of Parliament's Nuclear Deal Commission said that the dismantling had stopped because of the lawmakers' letter to Rouhani. On Friday, November 13th, here's what Obama was boasting about on ABC's Good Morning America. From Reuters, Kurdish forces backed by U.S. airstrikes seized the northern Iraqi town of Sinjar from ISIS in one of the most significant counterattacks since the militants swept through the north last year. Kurdish Peshmerga forces, which led the operation, had secured Sinjar's wheat silo, cement factory, hospital, and several other public buildings. Then on Sunday, November 15th, as I mentioned earlier, France targeted a command post, a jihadist recruiting center, a weapons warehouse, and a terrorist training camp, dropping 20 bombs on ISIS's de facto capital in Raqqa, Syria. Turning to our Intifada update. On Monday, November 9th, from Ynet News, Israeli security forces arrested 24 members of a Hamas terror network in Qalqilia in the West Bank. The network received guidance, instructions, and large-scale funding from Hamas command centers in Qatar and Gaza. And on Tuesday, November 10th, from Haaretz, 2 Palestinians, one of whom was 12 years old, stabbed an Israeli security guard on the light rail in the Pisgat Ze'ev neighborhood of Jerusalem. The guards shot one assailant, and the other was apprehended by security forces. Also on Tuesday, a Palestinian assailant with a knife in his hand ran toward two security guards near Damascus Gate in Jerusalem's Old City. The guards shot the attacker before he managed to stab them. Then from the Jerusalem Post, in the third such attack on Tuesday, a Palestinian man pulled a knife on and charged Israeli border police officers manning a checkpoint next to Abu Dis, just east of Jerusalem. Police opened fire and killed the attacker. Then, security camera footage emerged on Tuesday evening of a Palestinian wielding a knife who charged two Israeli security guards at Damascus Gate in Jerusalem's Old City earlier in the day. In the video, the assailant can be seen with the knife running towards the guards and the guards rapidly responding to the attack. On Thursday, November 12th, from the Washington Post, twin suicide bombings claimed by ISIS killed at least 43 people and wounded more than 200 in Beirut during rush hour in the Burj al-Barajina neighborhood, where many Hezbollah loyalists live. In a statement translated by the Site Intelligence Group, the Islamic State said the first bomber struck with an explosives-rigged motorcycle, followed by a second assailant wearing a suicide vest. And a third suicide bomber was killed when the second attacker detonated his explosives. From the Times of Israel, Sheikh Khaled al-Mughrabi, a prominent Palestinian preacher who I reported on last week, regularly delivering sermons from the pulpit at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, was indicted on Thursday for incitement to violence. A video of Mughrabi delivering a sermon saying that Jews will be wiped out was flagged by Palestinian Media Watch and sent to police, leading to the preacher's arrest. Quote, "We will go after the Jews everywhere. They won't escape us. They won't be able to escape us. The children of Israel will all be wiped out." Close quote. And on Friday, November 13th, Haaretz reports 40-year-old Rabbi Yaakov Littman and his 18-year-old son were killed in a shooting attack south of Hebron in the West Bank on Friday afternoon. Two other passengers were wounded. The Israel Security Agency arrested a Palestinian suspect in the shooting and located the gun and vehicle used in the attack. Then on Saturday, November 14th, from Ynet News, 4 Israelis were wounded in the West Bank in a vehicular terror attack. A Palestinian terrorist armed with a large knife tried to enter Sagat with a car that had Israeli license plates. But following a security check by the guard at the gate, the Palestinian turned around and intentionally hit the car of a resident of Sagat head on. The Palestinian attacker was killed in the collision. And to recap, ISIS is expanding its attacks, as we saw in Paris last week, and its threats as well. The Queiris air base has been taken back by Syrian regime forces after more than a year-long siege by ISIS. Iran has stopped dismantling centrifuges in the Natanz and Fordow uranium enrichment plants. Kurdish forces backed by U.S. airstrikes seized the northern Iraqi town of Sinjar from ISIS. Songs about stabbing Jews to death are all the rage on West Bank airwaves. Israeli security forces arrested 24 members of a Hamas terror network. 2 Palestinians, one of whom was 12 years old, stabbed an Israeli security guard. The guard shot one assailant and the other was apprehended. A Palestinian assailant with a knife in his hand ran toward 2 security guards near Damascus Gate. The guards shot the attacker before he managed to stab them. A Palestinian man pulled a knife on and charged Israeli border police officers. The police opened fire and killed the attacker. A Palestinian wielding a knife charged 2 Israeli security guards at Damascus Gate. The guards responded rapidly. Twin suicide bombings claimed by ISIS killed at least 43 people and wounded more than 200 in Beirut during rush hour. Sheikh Khaled al-Mughrabi, a prominent Palestinian preacher, who I reported on last week, was indicted on Thursday for incitement to violence. 40-year-old Rabbi Yaakov Littman and his 18-year-old son were killed in a shooting attack in the West Bank. 2 other passengers were wounded, and 4 Israelis were wounded in the West Bank in a vehicular terror attack. The Palestinian attacker was killed in the collision. And that, my friends, is what the lamestream media is not telling you. Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, stay safe. Shalom.
Crowded rooms, I need more space than I consume. Enough is time alone with you, underneath the naked moon, sharing confidential moods and making chatter. Mockingbird nocturnal sings notations of eternal things, entering the quantum breeze, flying not for want of wings. He lights his gaze on you and me, simply because we matter.